Welcome back to Boring Time Before Sleep, where the quietest moments hide the darkest truths. Tonight, we ask a question few dare to face. What if evil isn't just committed by monsters in the dark, but by neighbors in broad daylight? What if silence, fear, and convenience can turn entire societies into accomplices? Not through force, not through hatred, but through looking away, through whispers, through the comfort of obedience. History remembers tyrants, but behind every tyrant stands a crowd, clapping, watching, saying nothing. In this episode, we explore a story that isn't about a single villain. It's about the many who made evil possible. By doing nothing at all. Turn down the lights. Get comfortable. And let's drift together into a quiet tale of complicity, conscience, and the high cost of silence. Some crimes don't need blood. No knives, no screams. Just silence from the crowd. We like to think evil comes from monsters, from men with weapons and madness in their eyes. But history tells a different story. The worst atrocities weren't committed by one man. They happened when entire societies stood by, looked away, or quietly obeyed. This is the story of collective evil. When good people become silent. When systems protect the cruel. When entire nations forget how to care. In this series, we won't just ask how evil begins. We'll ask something deeper and more dangerous. What happens when everyone plays a small part in something very wrong? Part 1. The banality of evil. He didn't look like a monster. He wore glasses, dressed neatly, and said he was just doing his job. That was Adolf Eichmann, the man who helped organize the Holocaust. He didn't scream or kill with his hands. He typed, filed papers, planned train schedules. At his trial, he wasn't raging with hate. He was calm, ordinary, and that's what terrified the world the most. Philosopher Hannah Arendt, who watched the trial, said something unforgettable. The banality of evil. Evil isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it wears a suit and blends in. The machine of many hands. Evil, when done by a whole society, rarely feels evil to those inside it. A soldier locks a door, a clerk stamps a name, a neighbor reports a family. No one feels responsible. It wasn't me. I only did a small part. But that's how systems of horror work. Not with one villain, but with thousands of people doing just their part. When no one speaks up, the machine keeps moving. Words that kill. Before bullets, there are words. In Nazi Germany, Jews were called rats. In Rwanda, Tutsis were called cockroaches. In America's slavery era, black people were called property. Words strip people of their humanity, and once someone is seen as less than human, hurting them doesn't feel wrong anymore. That's how genocide begins, not with guns, but with language. The silence of the majority. Why don't people stop it? Because they're afraid. Because they want to fit in. Because they think, if I don't do it, someone else will. In the 1950s, a famous experiment showed how people would give the wrong answer just to agree with the group. Now imagine that pressure multiplied by fear, war, and propaganda. People follow the crowd, even when the crowd walks toward darkness. Ordinary people, unthinkable crimes. Let's be clear. The Holocaust wasn't done by monsters alone. It took millions to run the trains, guard the camps, teach the hate. In Rwanda, neighbors killed neighbors with machetes. In the US, for decades, regular people enforced racism, not with violence, but with silence and laws. These weren't evil villains. They were teachers, farmers, priests, shopkeepers. They didn't need to be cruel. They just needed to go along. How we justify the unjustifiable. Psychologist Albert Bandura called it moral disengagement. It's how people silence their guilt. I was just following orders. They deserved it. It's not my fault. I don't make the rules. When everyone uses those excuses, evil becomes invisible. It feels normal. The hard truth. The scariest thing is not that some people are evil. It's that under the right conditions, anyone can be. All it takes is fear, a lie repeated enough times, and people willing to look away. Part 2. How genocide happens step by step. Genocide doesn't happen in one day. It walks in slowly, on quiet feet. No one wakes up and decides to kill 1 million people overnight. It begins with whispers, with fear, with us versus them. A genocide is a process, not a moment, and each step seems small until it's too late. Step 1. Create a division. It starts with a line. We are good. They are different, dangerous, not like us. The Nazis said Jews were polluting Germany. The Hutu extremists said the Tutsis wanted to enslave them. Colonial powers said some races were born to rule, others to serve. Once the line is drawn, the story begins. Step 2. Spread the story. The lie needs fuel, and propaganda feeds it. Posters, radio, newspapers, schools, sermons. They repeat the message. They're not like us. They're taking what's ours. They are the enemy. In Rwanda, a radio station called Tutsis cockroaches every day. In Nazi Germany, textbooks taught children to hate. It doesn't take long before people believe it. Step 3. Legalize discrimination. Next, laws change, quietly. Certain people lose jobs. They can't own land. They must carry ID cards. They're not allowed to vote, study, or speak freely. But it's legal, so no one questions it. Hate becomes policy. And many think, well, if the government says it's okay. Step 4. Isolate the target. Once labeled, the group is separated. Ghettos are built. Villages are fenced. Names are listed. Travel is banned. People disappear from schools, from markets, from memory. The rest of society shrugs and says, "It's not my problem." They're just being moved somewhere else. But the train has already started. Step 5. Arm the crowd. At this point, fear is high. Rage is boiling. People are desperate, angry, hungry for someone to blame. Then someone hands them a weapon. In Rwanda, it was machetes. In Nazi Germany, it was gas chambers. In Bosnia, it was guns and fire. And behind it all is the message. You must protect your people before they destroy you. Step 6. Mass killing begins. Now, the unthinkable becomes real. Thousands, then millions, are hunted, tortured, murdered. Often not by soldiers, by neighbors, co-workers, even friends. Some kill from hate, others from fear. Many just follow orders. And the rest? They watch, they stay silent, they try to survive. Step 7. Deny and forget. After the blood dries, a new story is told. It didn't happen. It was war. We were just following orders. They did worse things to us. Photos are hidden, documents burned, witnesses silenced. And slowly, people move on until the next time history repeats. But why does it work? Because each step feels small. One rule, one word, one ID card. No step feels like murder until the last one. And by then, those who wanted to stop it are gone. Those who doubted are afraid. And those who watched say, it was too late. The lesson: genocide isn't a sudden storm. It's a slow leak, and society must choose whether to patch it or let it drown them. Every time we ignore hate, laugh at cruelty, or stay silent, we step closer to that edge. And when a whole society chooses silence, evil doesn't need to knock. It's already inside. Part 3. The psychology of the bystander. Why people do intervene. I didn't hurt anyone. I just did nothing. That sentence echoes through history, in courtrooms, documentaries, and late-night regrets. They weren't killers. They didn't swing the machete or lock the door. But they saw it, heard it, felt it in their bones, and chose silence. Why? Fear comes first. In regimes of terror, fear is a language everyone understands. Speak up and you could disappear. Defend someone and your family might suffer. Even a whisper of doubt can be punished. So people stay quiet, not because they agree, but because they want to live. Fear turns good people into quiet ones. The power of the crowd. In 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was stabbed to death in New York City. Dozens heard her screams. No one called the police. Why? Psychologists call it the bystander effect. The more people witness something, the less likely any one person is to act. Everyone thinks someone else will do something. Surely, I'm not the only one who sees this. And so, nothing happens. Now imagine that, but on a national scale. Obedience over conscience. In the Milgram experiment, people were told to deliver electric shocks to strangers. Most obeyed, even when the victim screamed in pain. They didn't enjoy it. They just believed the authority figure in the lab coat. They said, I was just following instructions. History is filled with that sentence. Governments, armies, companies, all built on chains of obedience. And when everyone follows orders blindly, evil doesn't need to be forced, it flows. Normalization of horror. When violence becomes daily news. When hatred becomes casual talk. When cruelty becomes policy. People adjust. At first, it shocks them. Then it disturbs them. Eventually, it bores them. Evil becomes wallpaper. And by the time people realize what they've accepted, they can no longer tell right from wrong. Self-preservation versus justice. Many bystanders think, if I speak up, what will happen to me? A few think, if I stay silent, what will happen to them? This quiet math, the weighing of self over others, is what lets injustice thrive. Not because people are evil, but because they are afraid to lose comfort, safety, status, even when others are losing everything. The deepest tragedy. In every genocide, every atrocity, there are three kinds of people. The perpetrators, who carry out the violence. The victims, who suffer and die. The bystanders, who could have made a difference, but didn't. Sometimes the third group is the largest. They outnumber the killers, outnumber the heroes, outnumber the victims. And yet their silence is what makes the rest possible. So what now? The lesson is not just historical, it's personal. When we witness injustice, even in small forms, we stand at a crossroads. Do we speak or stay silent? Do we risk discomfort or protect ourselves? Because the truth is hard. The world doesn't need more villains to fall apart. It just needs enough good people to look the other way. Part 4. The Resistors, when one voice stands against the crowd. In a world of silence, even a whisper can sound like thunder. When a society falls into darkness, most people follow. Some stay quiet, fewer resist. But there are always a few, very few, who choose the harder path. They are the ones who say, no, even when it costs them everything. The courage to say no. In Nazi Germany, a young student named Sophie Skoll stood on a street corner, handing out flyers that spoke the truth. She knew the risk. She did it anyway. When caught, she said to the judge, somebody had to make a start. She was executed. But her words still live. The man who refused to salute. A famous photograph shows rows of workers giving the Nazi salute. Except one man. August Landmesser, arms crossed, face defiant. He had fallen in love with a Jewish woman. He had seen the lies. He stood still while everyone else bowed. He was later arrested, imprisoned, forgotten. But in that single moment, he proved one person can refuse even when the whole world obeys. The village that said no. In the south of France, during World War II, there was a small Protestant village called Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. When the Nazis came looking for Jews, the villagers didn't hand them over. They hid them in homes, barns, even under church floors. Farmers, teachers, children, all risking their lives, not out of hate, but out of love. Together, they saved over 3,000 lives. When asked why, they simply said, "We are doing what has to be done." Whistleblowers in modern times. Resistance isn't just in war. It happens in boardrooms, prisons, classrooms. Edward Snowden exposed mass surveillance. Frances Haugen revealed Facebook's dark algorithms. Chelsea Manning leaked war crimes. They were called traitors, criminals. But their actions sparked global debate. Because resistance today doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it just sends an email and tells the truth. Why resistance is rare. It's lonely. It's dangerous. It doesn't guarantee success. You risk your job, your freedom, your life. And often, no one thanks you. But resistors don't do it for applause. They do it because conscience won't let them stay silent. The ripple effect. One act of courage can inspire thousands. A whisper can break the silence. A small act, hiding a child, telling the truth, refusing to salute, can echo through history. And that's the secret. Evil thrives in silence, but even a single voice can shake its foundation. Part 5. The long shadow when societies live with their own guilt. The war ended, but the silence stayed. After the bombs stop falling and the weapons are put down, the hardest part begins. Facing what we did or what we let happen. Some societies choose to forget. Others choose to confront the truth, no matter how painful. Germany's reckoning. After World War II, Germany stood in ruins, not just physically, but morally. At first, many Germans said, "We didn't know. We were following orders. It wasn't us." But over time, something rare happened. They looked in the mirror. They built museums, not to celebrate, but to remember the victims. They taught their children not pride, but responsibility. The Holocaust became part of the national memory, not erased, but faced. It didn't erase the guilt, but it kept the wound from becoming a lie. Japan's silence. In contrast, Japan has struggled with facing its wartime atrocities, especially in China and Korea. Some textbooks still minimize the horrors. Survivors of events like the Nanjing massacre wait for official recognition. Many young people grow up not knowing what their grandparents did. And so the past lingers, not as healing, but as a ghost that refuses to leave. America's mirrors. Slavery, Jim Crow, native genocide, internment camps. America, too, walks with ghosts. Each generation struggles with how much truth to tell. Some want to bury the past, to say, "That was long ago." Others demand, "We cannot move forward until we look back. The fight isn't over history, it's over memory. Why this matters. If a society refuses to face its wrongs, it repeats them. If it pretends it was innocent, it learns nothing. But if it tells the truth, even when it hurts, it becomes stronger, not weaker. Guilt can be poison, but it can also be medicine. Part 6. The role of institutions when systems enable evil. People commit crimes. Systems make them possible. Behind every atrocity, there are systems. Laws, governments, corporations, churches, schools. They may not kill directly, but they clear the path. Law as a weapon. In Nazi Germany, everything was legal. Jews lost rights step by step, through laws, not mobs. In apartheid South Africa, racism was enforced by courtrooms. In the American South, segregation was protected by sheriffs and judges. When evil wears a uniform and carries paperwork, it becomes harder to resist and easier to accept. Churches that stayed silent. In Rwanda, some priests helped protect victims. Others handed them over to killers. In Nazi Germany, most churches kept quiet. Few spoke out against the Holocaust, even when they knew. When morality is outsourced to religion or power, silence becomes sacred. Corporations and profits. Many companies profited from genocide and slavery. IBM helped the Nazis track Jews with punch card systems. US companies sold supplies to apartheid South Africa. Textile companies today profit from forced labor. Often, the motive isn't ideology, it's profit. And money doesn't ask questions. The danger of bureaucracy. Eichmann, one of the architects of the Holocaust, said he was just a clerk. He never shot anyone, he just arranged trains. He didn't hate, he organized. And that's what makes systems terrifying. They let people feel innocent while they build the machine. Part 7. Collective memory. What we choose to remember and forget. History is not what happened, it's what we choose to tell. Every nation, every culture tells stories about itself. Some are heroic. Some are tragic. Some are rewritten. Monuments that lie. Statues are not just stone, they are messages. A general on a horse, a flag waving. But what about the missing faces, the victims? Who is remembered and who is erased? In many places, monuments glorify conquest, slavery, colonization, without telling the whole story. And when we walk by them every day, we learn. This is who we admire. Textbooks and half-truths. What children learn in school shapes what they believe is normal. If textbooks leave out crimes, if they skip over victims, if they rewrite defeat as victory, then future generations inherit lies with smiles. The power of art and film. Sometimes truth comes not through facts, but through stories. Movies like Schindler's List, books like Night, photos from Vietnam, They reach where textbooks cannot. They make people feel, and feeling is often what leads to truth. Why memory matters. A society that forgets its cruelty may repeat it. A society that only remembers its greatness becomes blind. But a society that tells both stories, the pride and the shame, becomes mature. Because healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from truth. Part 8. Preventing the next time. How we fight collective evil. Evil doesn't end. It waits. The final question is the hardest. Can we stop this from happening again? Not just once, but over and over. Start early. Teach empathy. Hatred begins in childhood. So must resistance. Teach children not just facts, but feeling. Stories of injustice, voices of victims. Not to shame them, but to shape them. Spot the signs. We now know the warning signs. Dehumanizing language. Authoritarian leaders. Silencing of dissent. Blaming outsiders. Weaponizing fear. These are the red flags. Ignore them, and we invite history back in. Protect whistleblowers and truth-tellers. The people who raise alarms must be protected, not punished. They are society's immune system. If we silence them, we silence our own defense. Be willing to act early. Stopping collective evil is not heroic. It's boring, it's uncomfortable, it's unpopular. It means speaking up in meetings, voting wisely, supporting the outcast, challenging your own group. It means doing small things before the big things happen. Because by the time evil is obvious, it's already strong. The final truth. Evil doesn't need monsters. Just people who look away. But it can be stopped, not by heroes, but by ordinary people choosing decency again and again. And that's the quiet hope in all this darkness. That in every society, even when the worst begins, someone will say no. Someone will resist. Someone will remember. And maybe someone will stop it. Slow, steady, emotional tone. When one person commits a crime, we call it evil. But when thousands agree, we call it normal. History doesn't just belong to villains. It belongs to the crowds who looked away, the institutions that stayed quiet, and the millions who said, "This isn't my problem." But silence is a choice. And every time we ignore injustice, we risk becoming part of it. Let this not just be a story you heard. Let it be a warning that in every era, the greatest danger isn't the evil we see. It's the silence we accept. If this message moved you, share it. Because sometimes one small voice is all it takes to break the silence.